put their lives on the line to keep us safe. I just wish George had been a little more forthcoming with me during the final days of Watergate. Tom Brokaw, March 2020. Introduction. My story is a soldier's story. In many ways, it's a story every soldier can relate to, because many of the events in my life were shared by other soldiers of my generation. I spent 2 tours in combat. In my case, that meant in Vietnam, mostly in relatively small but deadly fights with Viet Cong and North Vietnamese regulars, but also in a couple of big battles. I was promoted from rank to rank. I trained hard, I fought, I commanded, first smaller units, then larger ones. I studied and taught at the U.S. Army's war colleges, and I strove always not just to follow, but also to understand the profession I had chosen, its customs, its values, its relationship to the civilian and political worlds it was part of, but also apart from. I never considered myself anything other than a soldier, and I never aspired to be anything else. I thought that defending our country and the democratic values it stands for was as high a calling as one could wish for. I learned how to serve that calling in places like Bosnia, El Salvador, the Congo, and the jungles and rice paddies of Vietnam. My first deployment fresh out of West Point was opposite Germany's Fulda Gap, where our outnumbered and outgunned forces faced the Soviet Union's massed tank armies. I was stationed opposite Fulda again as a company, brigade, and divisional commander, and then finally as a corps commander, still confronting the same strategic problem. I was in West Germany while the Berlin Wall was going up, when American and Soviet tanks faced each other across the barbed wire, and President Kennedy gave his Ich bin ein Berliner speech. The hundreds of little flower and cross memorials marking where East Berliners had been shot down trying to escape to freedom made a lifelong impression on me. I was in Germany again when the Iron Curtain lifted and the wall came down, when tens of thousands of East Germans walked and drove in their little trabants across the border with tears of joy in their eyes, and were met by equally joyful crowds of West German friends and relatives. In Germany and elsewhere, I learned the necessity of alliances. I put that lesson to use fighting the drug cartels in Latin America, and then in the Balkan War. As the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's NATO military chief, I led a 60,000-soldier army into Bosnia that implemented the Dayton Accords and put an end to the massacres and ethnic cleansing going on there. NATO forces in Bosnia came from 33 countries, including a brigade from Russia. I saw the partnership we forged there as a stepping stone to a wider, ongoing strategic cooperation between the United States and Russia. Our collaboration in Bosnia led to the NATO-Russia Founding Act of 1997, which formally ended the Cold War. But American and Russian national interests coincided or ran parallel in many other areas as well. We had mutual interests then, we still have them today, even as we fall further into a period of renewed conflict. I knew that neither the Russians nor ourselves could simply put away many decades' worth of hostility and distrust, but I thought that cooperation in endeavors of mutual interest could become a pathway toward more trust and a way out of the old antagonism. I pursued that strategy vigorously until my retirement as Supreme Allied Commander. As Commander-in-Chief, SINC, of Latin America and Europe, and as Commander of NATO's forces, one of my primary jobs was to advise the political leadership, the President and Secretary of Defense on one hand, the NATO Secretary-General and Council on the other. As often as possible, I tried to anticipate the needs of these decision-makers and give proactive advice so that the feasibility and risks of potential engagements would be clear. I emphasized always the fundamental requirements for successful military action: clarity of mission, unity of command, robust rules of engagement, and timely direction from the political leadership. These were lessons I had learned from the critical events I had witnessed and been part of in Germany, Latin America, Vietnam, and the Watergate White House, where I had been Alexander Haig's deputy when he was Nixon's chief of staff.